It was the summer after my senior year of high school, also known as my last year of school ever, and I was oh so hyped up about going to my first anime convention. I did my absolute best to try to sleep that night, but I didn't end up going to sleep until 3 in the morning. I did my best to dress myself up for this special occasion, and I ended up making some hodgepodge outfit that made me look like a weird crossbreed between scene and hippie. I hopped into my brother's car when he came over to pick up me and my boyfriend. I ended up getting a painful stomachache due to having a weak stomach and therefore getting easily carsick. However, I was way too excited to let that stop me from going to my first anime convention. I immediately rushed in while my boyfriend and my brother both tried to keep up with me. I met up with my friends and we all started walking around the hotel that Anime Con was taking place at. My boyfriend and my brother came along. I did not leave them behind, just in case you were wondering. I'm not that evil. After we did the usual Anime Con stuff, such as competing in their games with strangers we've never met before, in costumes way better than us, to checking out all the little selling booths for overpriced but oh so adorable trinkets, we came across a rather interesting room. The room was very dark and there was not that much people in it. It was just a young college-age looking guy in dreadlocks and glasses, standing by a projection board while there are a few of the Anime Con goers sitting in the chairs that were set up. The guy in dreadlocks ran out to greet us and said his name was Evan, and he asked us if we would like to see his presentation. I was already intrigued by him, so I agreed. My brother, my boyfriend, and all my other friends tagged along with me. Luckily, there was enough seats for us, as there wasn't that many people in there. Before starting his presentation, Evan stood in front of the board and told us all about how he was obsessed with animating his own versions of cartoons. He told us all that he was not willing to sell or publish them in any way, so he does not get in trouble for copyright, which made sense. He announced to us that he was now going to play his own homemade episode of Spongebob before enthusiastically scooting away from the board so that we could all get a good view of his episodes. The title card just read Incarcerated in black text over an orange background. The first shot showed SpongeBob in Krabs' office as he was listening to him talk about his new policy for the Krusty Krab. He told SpongeBob that he did not invite Squidward, and because he knew that he would just completely ignore it and disobey it, unlike SpongeBob, who was quote-unquote trustworthy and reliable, as Krabs put it. Then he started telling SpongeBob that he secretly always favored him over Squidward, as he always did what he was told, and how he always put more effort into his jobs than Squidward did. I want you to understand that I am trusting you in following this new policy without hesitation, Krabs said. No surprise to anybody, SpongeBob agreed and continued to listen before he even knew what the policy was, completely unaware of what Krabs was about to say. Krabs then instructed SpongeBob to do a multitude of immoral actions, such as hacking and deleting anyone's account online who leaves a negative review of the Krusty Krab, frequently vandalizing the chum bucket to make absolute sure that no customers came to visit, search other restaurants and their new products so that the Krusty Krab could create their own versions, which is basically stealing their idea. Worst of all, write a multitude of articles filled with misinformation about the other restaurants, such as fake reviews or fake studies that showed negative or deadly health effects of eating their food. What kind of ticked me off a little bit was that when SpongeBob asked why he wanted him to do such crazy things, Mr. Krabs just pulled out the "You were always my favorite employee out of all of them," even though there was only two, and he thought he would do so without hesitation card. SpongeBob, now intimidated by Mr. Krabs' guilt trips, reluctantly agrees to do Mr. Krabs' dirty work. "I knew I could trust you, lad," Mr. Krabs said, satisfied. The next scene shows SpongeBob walking around the town posting what was pretty much anti-chum bucket propaganda with a pretty worried and guilty look on his face. What am I worrying about? Mr. Krabs knows what he's doing," SpongeBob said to himself. "I mean, what could go wrong?" The scene immediately cut to SpongeBob in a pretty dingy-looking prison cell, crying his eyes out, followed by a thud sound effect. "I was only following orders!" He stuck his head in between the bars and shouted in between sobs. "Tell it to the judge," was all he got back as a response. SpongeBob sniffled pretty hard and went back to his crap hole of a prison bed, letting out sobs in a much more quiet manner. Suddenly, the stains of grime and dirt on the walls started to form into strange-looking creatures, and they all started crowding around SpongeBob. The camera cut to them as it panned through all of their faces, each one more grotesque than the last. The first one was nothing but a cluster of eyes. The second one had a big eyeball in its mouth, and noses where its eyes should be. And the third one was a mixture of slimy facial features, all jumbled up randomly together. The list goes on. The camera cut to SpongeBob's face, which was a mixed bag of both holy terror and no emotion at all. The camera slowly panned to the wall as the shadows of all the creatures dogpiled onto the shadow of SpongeBob, and he screamed loudly but helplessly. The very last scene showed SpongeBob with his orange prison suit torn up with bits of it even laying on the ground. There are multicolored stains on the floor and even on the walls. For some reason, the stains had eyes. While I watched SpongeBob rocking back and forth on the cold, hard floor, whisper singing to himself, "I'm a good sponge. I'm a good sponge." All I could think about was how the rainbow eyeball stains appeared. Evan then ended his presentation with some mixed expression on his face that read both pride and shame at the same time. He rubbed the back of his neck and giggled nervously while looking at the ground. I can't talk today. Any questions? Everyone just either complimented him on his beautifully dark work or asked him why he did it and how he did it. I was starting to get bored when he started answering the questions because I have a short attention span. So I walked out of there and started going back to the shops with another one of their free, overly caffeinated sodas in my hand. Back in middle school, my brother would always tell me how weird anime cons were and how he was a bit iffy on them. Now that he was graduated from high school, and I was as well, we figured we'd give it a try. Needless to say, my brother was right about anime cons back then. They could be weird. Not saying that they're bad, but if you're gonna go, just be careful.